So over the past couple of weeks, it's become clear that we are having really different experiences of this pandemic as community. There are folks who are still working out in the world in essential jobs. There's folks who are figuring out how to work from home. There are people who were retired or unemployed or otherwise not working, that things aren't changing quite as much. There's people who are being directly impacted by the coronavirus, people whose loved ones are sick or dying. There are people who that is very distant and it hasn't yet reached their circles of care. People who are experiencing this great pause as a welcome break, who are working harder than they have before, whether that work at parenting or mutual aid work or all of the other things that call on our hearts now. I just want to let you know that you are not doing this wrong, whatever your experience is. It's easy to compare. It's easy to be jealous or envious of someone who seems to be having an easier go of it. I know I've had those moments, but there is no roadmap for how to do this. And as long as everyone is okay enough, and we can set the bar of enough wherever we need to, we're getting through it. It's hard for some, it's easy for others. And we are a community that is really good at recognizing that we have diverse experiences of the sacred. And we are, I think, figuring out how to do that here as well, as we all experience this pandemic, this season, in really different ways. So come let us gather, come let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Cybelle Shattuck. I serve on the Sunday Services Committee, and it is my privilege to welcome you all to our virtual service on this Easter morning. Whether we are in our church or scattered, most of us around Southwest Michigan, those of us in this part of the state, from our homes, are within the ancestral lands of the Potawatomi people, a land that lately I've noticed I'm sharing with a lot of red-winged blackbirds. Also some very hungry rabbits, which seems appropriate today. I apparently need to build a fence if I want any vegetables this year. As Unitarian Universalists, we draw wisdom from many different traditions, from spiritual traditions, from science, and from nature. And I always like to point out to people that even though the Christians have a big thing about Easter, all of the imagery of Easter predates Christianity, and most of it comes from nature. So we can enjoy that too. A number of years ago, I visited a church that had a restored prairie, and they had done a burn to clear the plants because fire-adapted plants grow back stronger after a burn. And so the minister just couldn't help it. She was writing a blog about resurrection symbolism in the prairie. But I've sort of been thinking about that in a different way, that the idea of fire causing things to be cut back in a way that looks catastrophic, but then leading them to be regenerated in ways that are even more beautiful afterwards. Maybe that's a symbolism that we can draw on today, and that when we regather in our church, the community all face to face, we'll look around and see each other and think we're more beautiful than we ever knew we were because of the time that we were separated and the time that we couldn't be together in one place. So welcome and happy Easter.
Good morning. I invite you to find a comfortable singing position. We're going to begin this morning with meditation on breathing. So we'll start with breathe in, breathe out, breathe breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love when I breathe in. I'll breathe in peace when I breathe out. I'll breathe out love.
So as we light chalices today, and I hope you have found some sort of improvisational chalice-like object to light. We're going to do that in a moment. And if you don't have that, I learned this week how to just hand. So if you cup your hands and then just put your thumbs in, it kind of looks a little bit like a chalice if you get the angle right. So however you light a chalice, I invite you to do that with me now. And if you like, I invite you also, if you're joining us via video, to type in the box where your chalice is lit. So whether that's your street or your neighborhood or city, you can be as specific or general as you like. So we can see all the places that we are gathering together and all of the places where chalices are lit today. So our words for the chalice lighting come from an Italian poet, Diego Valeri, and he writes, "You who have an eye for miracles, regard the bud now appearing on the bare branch of the fragile young tree. It's a mere dot, a nothing, but already it's a flower, already a fruit, already its own death and resurrection."
Beatrix Bunny awoke on Sunday morning, Easter morning, very excited to search for her Easter basket. She loved Easter eggs, jelly beans, chocolate eggs, and especially chocolate bunnies. Well, more than that, she loved eating all the above. And though it was quite early on Easter morning, the sun was just peeking through the burrow. And she was pretty sure it was time to get the whole bunny family up to start searching for their Easter baskets. As Papa Bunny gathered all of her siblings together, Mama Bunny wanted to remind them again about why these celebrations centered around eggs and bunnies every spring. Who remembers? Asked Mama Bunny. Oh, I do, said Betsy. It all goes back to the ancient goddess Ostara, or Eostar. She's the goddess of new beginnings, of spring, and everybody celebrated the return of new life to the earth in the spring. Yes, answered Mama Bunny, good. And why are eggs and bunnies the symbols for this time of year? Oh, I know, said Bonobo. Eggs represent new life, and bunnies, well, bunnies can have so many babies, and they can have up to 5 litters a year with up to 10 babies at one time. That could be 50 bunnies a year. So they represent lots and lots of new life. Everyone's excited about new life in the springtime. It seems like it's been gray and dreary and cold for so long. What better way to celebrate than yummy spring treats to eat in our Easter baskets? He was excited as Beatrix to begin the Easter egg hunt and dig into his Easter basket. But Mama and Papa were not ready just quite yet. So Papa asked everybody, do you know why the Christian celebration of Easter has almost the same name as the goddess Eostara? Oh, I know, said Benjamin. Because the early Christians took the celebration of Easter and put it on top of the ancient goddess celebration of the spring and the goddesses of Ostara. So while the meaning, the name of the holiday changed a little bit, the meaning changed a little bit, but all the same symbols remain the same, and a lot of the meaning remained the same. Yeah, said Bugsy. In part of Germany and Austria in ancient times, it was a popular custom to color eggs and to share them with your neighbors. Though it wasn't until later that the Easter Bunny started delivering baskets to everybody's home. Right, said Papa. And it wasn't even until the turn of the 20th century that chocolate Easter bunnies started becoming popular. So you can see how important bunnies are to these spring celebrations this time of year. Everybody loves bunnies and the abundance that we represent. Bunnies rock. Bunnies are the best. Yay for bunnies. Bunnies rule. All the children rolled their eyes at Papa Bunny's silly jokes all the time. They're like, okay, can we just search for our Easter baskets now? So finally we were able to hop around the meadow and fill our Easter baskets with all the hidden eggs and eat all the yummy treats. As we sat around in the sunshine enjoying our baskets, Mama pointed out all the changes taking place all around us. We noticed the new buds that were just forming on the spring trees and the bushes, all the spring flowers that were in bloom and the beautiful colors they brought forth, and especially the bird songs. So many different kinds of birds were singing, and the spring peepers. The frogs were all singing too. The spring peepers were peeping. We were thinking in the Bunny family that all of these signs of spring inspire in us a feeling of hopefulness for new beginnings. Spring really is a magical time of year, especially in the Forest Glen, in the busy burrow, Bunny burrow in the Forest Glen. So spring is celebrated and new beginnings are celebrated, even in the midst of so much change in the world. We can still hold with us feelings of hope in our heart for new beginnings. May it be so.
Thank you, Diane, for that wonderful story for this day. People's people are generous people, and your generosity is not limited just to this congregation. About once a month, we have a special offering to support the work of good and important organizations in our community. And today, the Social Justice Coordinating Committee recommends 2 organizations for your generosity. And to ease the administrative burden on our staff, we are asking you if you are able to give directly to them. And Chris has already pasted the giving links in the chat, or you can mail checks or however you are generous. Just go directly to them so we don't have to collect checks and do all of that work that we often do when we're able to be in the same place. So the organizations that have been selected are the YWCA for their domestic assault program. We know that this time of shelter in place for some is a welcome respite, and for others, it is a very dangerous time. If folks are living with domestic violence or other threats at home, the added stress and the increased togetherness of this time is not safe. And through this time, the YWCA is continuing their good and important work to support people, women and children experiencing domestic violence through temporary housing, through legal advocacy, support groups, counseling, and in other ways, and a crisis hotline. So I invite you to give generously to them if you are able. Another group doing good and important work right now is the YMCA. They are offering emergency childcare for essential workers. With schools closed and so many childcare centers closed, people who work in healthcare or in grocery stores or in so many other essential ways who have children are left scrambling. And the YMCA is stepping in to fill some of that gap and offering subsidized care to families that need that. They are also working to feed people who don't have enough food, offering up to 1,000 meals a day to Kalamazoo area families, which is good and important. And if you are able, I invite you to generously support this work. Our community needs all of us to be generous to get through this challenging time. Thank you. The offering will now be received.
It's hard to believe in the sun in the dark of the night. And it's hard to believe in the stars in the bright morning lights. Well, we all need a place we can go to learn what is real, to ponder the depths of the soul where truth is revealed. Oh, this is our place. This is our home. Working and seeking, we're never alone. In this mortar and stone, these windows and walls, love's earthly home, heeding a call. It's bread for the journey, oil for the flame, for people of love, people of hope, people of change. It's hard to believe there is peace when war rages on. And it's hard to believe there is love in hate's raging throng. But for every brave soldier, a peacemaker takes her own stand. And for every soul long turned away, there will be a new hand. Oh, let it be you. Let me. Here in love's dwelling, we learn to believe. In this mortar and stone, these windows and walls, love's earthly home, heeding all. It's bread for the journey, oil for the flame, for people of love, people of hope, people of change. Place is what welcomes you in. You build it, you change it, so the promise of love can begin here in this room. Oh, here in these arms, hearts open wide, welcoming on. This mortar and stone, these windows and walls, love's earthly home, needing a call. It's bread for the journey, oil for the flame, for people of love, people of hope, people of change. We're people of love, people of hope, people of change. We're living out love, living out hope, living out change. Oh, sing out for love, sing out for hope, sing out for change. Now I believe in the sun in the dark of the night.
Please join me in expressing gratitude for the generosity of our community using the words that are in the chat box. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone.
This is a community that supports one another in good times and hard times. One of the ways they show that support, and there are many, is taking time during our service to invite those who wish to share joys and sorrows and milestones of their lives. So in this straight format, if you would like to share, I invite you to type into our chat box your joys or your sorrows. I will pause the recording as I share these, so they don't have to live on YouTube in perpetuity. If you have joys or sorrows, this is the time to share them. Sources of reason and radiance, sources of courage and compassion. Keep watch with those who work or watch or weep this day. May the suffering be soothed, may the weary find rest, may the sick tended, may the dying and those who love them find peace, may the joyous be shielded, and may all of us know that we are wrapped in the love that surrounds us always, the web that connects us to all that exists.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. Join me on the second time. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
I'd like to invite us all to take a few deep breaths together. You may wish to place your hand on your belly to be sure that you're taking some deep belly breaths. Does your hand rise and fall as you breathe? Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. And breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, my breath grows deep. And breathing out, my breath grows slow. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. And breathing out, I know that this is a wonderful moment. As you breathe in, I invite you to notice if there are places of tension being held within your body. As you exhale, I invite you to notice those places and gently allow them to release. Bring your attention to your neck, your shoulders, your jaw, your forehead, and maybe in the pit of your stomach. I invite you to notice whatever feelings may be present in your heart and in your body at this time. Gently allow whatever arises to be present and acknowledge it tenderly. You may wish to place your hand on your heart or some other gesture of kindness as you sit with whatever feelings are present within you. You may want to take a few deep breaths and simply allow and acknowledge whatever you are feeling to be present with a sense of compassion and tenderness and gentleness. In these times in which we are living that are unprecedented in our lifetimes, we need to allow some spaciousness to be with whatever arises and not try to numb it or push it away. As you exhale, you may want to envision allowing all of your fears and worries to just be released like steam through the breath. As you exhale, notice what is present in you and allow that which is not serving you to release. As you breathe in, you may invite a tender smile as you're present with your feelings. Perhaps you could imagine your heart being filled with loving kindness and compassion for yourself and for all those who are struggling in such difficult times. As our song we sang at the opening says, as you breathe in peace. And as you breathe out love. On this day, may we be filled with mindful awareness, with deepest wisdom, with abundant patience, with unlimited gratitude. May we have open hearts and open minds May we be flexible and fluid. May we be filled with humility and curiosity. May we practice skillful action and loving kindness for ourselves and for all beings. May it be so, and blessed be. I'll take a few moments to breathe in peace and breathe out love during our silent meditation time.
We're trying now my audio via phone to see if this makes a difference. Leave your votes in the comments. Our first reading today is At the Tea Garden by Margaret Hasse. My friend and I mull over the teas, displaying in square jars with beveled glass labeled by type. Each name seems part of a haiku. After the snow sprouting, Moon Palace, mist over the gorges. I'm drawn to green teas with unoxidized leaves that don't wither, hold their grassy fragrance like willow under snow in winter. The proprietor offers real china for the Chinese tea. Animal bones, fine ground, give whiteness, translucency, and strength to the porcelain that appears delicate, resists chipping. The rim of the cup is warm and thin. My friend's lips are plush. Her lovely mouth opens to give advice I ask for. We talk about memory of threshold events, like a first kiss or a poem published. She can't remember. I tell her about my brother-in-law's chemotherapy, his third bout of cancer. He wants his family to put a pinch of his ashes in things he liked. His banjo, the top drawer of his desk, the garden. I wouldn't mind becoming part of a set of bone china that serves tea in a cozy tea house smelling of incense, cinnamon, musk, and carved teak. I'd like to be brought to a small table, sit between friends' quiet words, held in hands so close that breath on the surface of warm drink makes mist rise over their faces.
The First Green of Spring by David Budbill. Out walking in the swamp, picking cowslip, marsh marigold, this sweet first green of spring. Now sautéed in a pan, melting to a deeper green than ever they were alive. This green, this life, harbinger of things to come. Now we sit at the table, munching on this message from the dawn, which says we and the world are alive again today, and this is the world's birthday. And even though we know we are growing old, we are dying, we will never be young again. We also know that we're still right here, now, today, and my, oh my, don't these greens taste good? Manifesto, The Mad Farmer Liberation Front by Wendell Berry. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die, and you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So friends, every day, do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium, plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world and laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful even though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motion of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.
All right, our next song to sing together is Jazz Alleluia. Alleluia is the only word. It's a little acrobatic, so I invite you to find a comfortable position and sing along with me. Here we go. Alleluia, 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 alleluia,
In the church of my childhood, there was a member named Gussie. And Gussie was 81 years older than me. I considered her a special friend, and so did my mother. And Gussie was the kind of person who just about everyone considered a special friend. She loved her church, and she loved the people in it, particularly, not as a general idea, but she knew things about each of us and would ask after us. And one of the many special things about Gussie was that she dressed for church. She was stylish and elegant. Her formal suit and hat and gloves stood out in the congregation. She stood out in Seattle, my hometown, a city that is not known for its attention to style. Most people there dress in polar fleece and sensible shoes, as if a hike might break out at any moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of things right with that. And it made Gussie's elegance stand out. On Easter, Gussie always pulled out all the stops, wearing an Easter bonnet tastefully done up with flowers. Everyone looked forward to seeing the beauty and the joy she embodied on Easter morning. Gussie died in the late 1990s, in her late 90s, after a long, meaningful life and a brief illness. She died in the early spring, only a few weeks before Easter, and we all mourned. A few members of the church mentioned how sad they would be to not see Gussie in her beautiful Easter finery that year. It felt like the end of Gussie's story, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter for our church. I've preached this story before, so I'm sure a few of you are nodding along because you know what happens next. Someone had an idea. What if we wore beautiful Easter bonnets like Gussie did? She spread the word. Wear an Easter bonnet this year in honor of Gussie. My mom and I spent a wonderful afternoon shopping for Easter bonnets, remembering Gussie. And that Easter morning, the sanctuary was filled with Easter bonnets on the heads of dozens of women and quite a few men, puzzling some of the first-time visitors. It was beautiful. The church of my childhood continues this tradition. They continued it. Church members and friends of all genders wore Easter bonnets on Easter morning. People who loved Gussie, people who never knew Gussie, people who weren't born before her death, people who were not part of that congregation during Gussie's lifetime have all been invited into Gussie's story. They all participate in this tradition. Her commitment to beauty lives on in all of them. And while this Easter bonnet tradition has faded over the years, it has continued. And I know there was an effort this year to get everyone to wear Easter bonnets to that church's Zoom service this morning. This feels like an Easter where we need all the beauty and connection we can muster. I returned to this story this year because it is my favorite Easter story, my favorite story of resurrection. People of all ages and people of all genders wearing Easter bonnets year after year in memory of someone that not all of them actually remember. That is resurrection. That is the triumph of love over death, which is the core of the Easter message. So we remember today that death is never the end of the story, that stories are always to be continued. Gussie's story continues on in the heads and the hearts of one congregation as they gather for worship this Sunday on Zoom, just as we do. And just like Gussie, we will all have some sort of resurrection after death. It happens in many ways. It happens in traditions carried forward, stories retold, favorite recipes, cooked and cooked and cooked again, heirlooms passed down. In our church community, it happens especially at memorial services. At our memorial services, stories are told about the deceased. Funny stories, loving stories, true stories, stories that reflect who the deceased was and what he valued, stories that reveal how deeply her life touched ours. We hear stories we never knew before and come to understand the deceased in a new way. In that way, our loved ones keep living, not in their bodies, but in our hearts and minds. Today, especially, we are living in the midst of death. One model of the coronavirus pandemic has projected that today, Easter Sunday, will be the day with the most COVID-19 deaths in our country. This is a team of researchers at the University of Washington. So today, the specter of death is nearer than usual for many of us. And it is a day to remember that death is not the end of the story, that each of us is destined for some sort of resurrection, for some sort of continuation, some sort of legacy after we die, in hats, in traditions, in stories, in the love that people will carry with us. That will be our legacies. Death is not the end. Stories are always to be continued. And when our lives are over, we live on in those who love us and those who we love. On this day, that is theologically complicated for many Unitarian Universalists, that sort of resurrection, the continued unfolding of our stories, of our influence, of our being, is the resurrection that I am clinging to, as so many are dying, as life feels especially fragile. On this day, that is enough resurrection for me. That is enough Easter. That is enough rebirth. That is enough of the grand metaphors of spring. Because what is spring but an annual resurrection? The world that had been dry and dormant, or wet and dormant, depending on the climate, begins to revive. Like Gussie, like my home congregation, the world festoons itself with flowers. Spring has sprung. This year especially, it's hard not to take spring personally, to see the first crocus shooting up its purple hand as some sort of reminder to pause and see beauty. It's hard not to see spring as a message. The daffodils remind us to pause and to hope. They remind me that beauty is possible in the midst of pain, that we can catch moments of joy even though we have considered all the facts and perhaps reconsidered and reconsidered and reconsidered, depending on our news consumption these days. The spring reminds us that the dormant dying time is over in the world of nature, and perhaps maybe we can start to begin to think of the possibility that this dormant or dying time of pandemic might eventually end. It won't end soon. We know that. We're making contingency plans around that in so many of our lives. But it will end. A glimmer of hope is present. Life continues. Italian poet Diego Valeri writes, "You who have an eye for miracles, regard the bud now appearing on the bare branch of the fragile young tree. It's a mere dot, a nothing. But already it's a flower, already fruit, already its own death and resurrection. We are part of that cycle, always. We are all a bud, a flower, a fruit, a death, a resurrection. We are part of unstoppable cycles of rebirth, regeneration, and resurrection." Many of us question the Easter story of Jesus. Did it really happen as the Gospels claim? We know enough science to know that bodily resurrection is miraculous. And I encourage you all to hold fast to these doubts, these questions. Many of our Unitarian forebearers were martyred for their doubts, for their public dissent from prevailing tradition. They died in part so that we might live with free minds. They died in part so that we now, as their descendants, might wonder and question and doubt. Death is not the end of their stories either. Their stories continue in us when our reason and experience inform what we believe. And we know that doubt cannot be the only thing that we hold fast. Many of us need something at our center beyond uncertainty. And for me, that center comes from the other half of our religious forebearers, the Universalists. The Universalists put love at the center of their lives and their faith. They believed that all of us are saved. There is nothing that anyone can do to separate themselves from the love that holds us and all that we love. I know I have been singing, "There is a love holding us," to myself over and over and over again in these days. And I know many of us come from different perspectives, have different sources of meaning and truth. And I know that the Easter miracle of bodily resurrection is not a miracle that speaks to everyone. And if that is your story, perhaps the miracles of science speak to you. We know, though I find it hard to know in my heart and fully grasp, that the atoms that make up our bodies were forged in the depths of distant stars, that have cycled through plants and animals and air and earth more times than we can begin to imagine. And these cycles will continue long after us. And to me, that unending cycle is also some sort of resurrection. Because we hold in our bodies the atoms of all who came before. So on Easter, it's a fun fact that it is a near certainty that our bodies today contain molecules from Jesus' body at the time of his death. You have to assume some sort of relatively even distribution of molecules over time, but if we make that assumption, the likelihood that an atom of Jesus is not in each of us is less than 0.0, then with 4 million zeros after it, and then a 1. It is hard to make sense of that number, but it tells me that we carry within our bodies the resurrected Jesus and the resurrected Buddha and the resurrected dinosaurs and the resurrected anything else you might care to name. It is literally in our bodies. And if we get metaphorical, we can say we carry the wisdom, the triumphs and failures, the evolution, the missteps of all that came before in our bodies as well. That is an Easter message for me, at least, that death is never the end, that the stories are always continuing, whether through the memories that live in others' hearts or the very fiber of our beings being reused and repurposed in the creation of new life. So friends, on this Easter day, a day that rings out with alleluias in the midst of suffering, distance, and death, may we hold all of that, as hard as it is to hold, and also have eyes for miracles. The miracles of love, the miracles of spring, the miracles of hope, the miracles of science, the miracles of memory. May we remember that death is not the end of the story. Life and love linger. Stories are always unfolding. May we be as joyful as we can, though we have considered all the facts. May we practice resurrection. May it be so. May we make it so. Amen.
Please join me in singing number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. Looks like lyrics just got posted in the chat. Here we go. All creatures of the earth and sky, come kindred, lift your voices high. Hallelujah, hallelujah, bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Swift rushing winds so wild and strong, white clouds that sail in haze along. Hallelujah, hallelujah, the rising morning praise rejoice. Our stars of evening find a voice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Cool flowing water, pure and clear, make music for our life to hear. Hallelujah, hallelujah, dance flame of fire so strong and bright, and bless us with the warmth and light. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Embracing earth, you day by day, bring forth your blessings on our way. Hallelujah, hallelujah, all herbs and fruits that richly grow, let them the glory also show. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
So friends, we're going to, in a few moments, try our experiment with coffee 15 minutes again. So if you want to stay and join a small group for conversation, please linger through the postlude for that. It's been a joy to connect with other folks in this sort of random assorting that happens. And we're going to close with these words that we've been closing with during this strange time. Keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous, be strong, let all you do be done in love. Go in peace, everyone, and go in love.
Okay, everyone, this is your cue. If you want to stay for some conversation, please stay. If you'd like to leave and not do that, this is your chance to do that. Whatever you decide, it's been such a joy to be with you today.
Roger, could you bring me some warmed up coffee?
Hi, Don.
We need to change to a
Warmed up coffee.
Hi, Ann. Hi, Doc.
Hi, Don.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mary. Oh, everybody turn off your mute.
Okay.
Oh, look, I randomly.
I'm just going to pop in occasionally.
There's Denise, right? We got room 7.
Hello.
That one, you join breakout room.